Hello and welcome again to Creative Connections. I'm Gary Blanchard, and tonight my guest is a singer, songwriter, and novelist, Sparkie Allison. Sparkie, welcome.
Thank you, Gary.
So you are unfortunately battling a little bit of a cold.
I am.
So we will not get to hear you sing tonight, but there's a lot to talk about. You got into music early, starting with accordion.
Yes.
On to trombone.
Yep.
How did you end up with guitar?
I actually had always wanted to play the guitar.
Okay.
And when my parents came home one day and said, "You're getting accordion lessons." And it all came about as my oldest brother was getting guitar lessons. And for some reason they couldn't get us guitar lessons, so they took us to the Accordion Mart in West Springfield. He got guitar lessons, and my other brother and I got accordion lessons. And all the while I'm learning accordion and learning how to read music and learning music theory and everything, but I really wanted to play guitar. So it wasn't until I was my 18th birthday. And I was recovering from, I had a head injury when I was 16, and finally had surgery a year later, and I was recovering from the surgery, couldn't play the trombone. And I was missing music, something terrible. And lo and behold, out of the blue for my 18th birthday, my oldest brother gave me a guitar.
Oh, that's great.
So I started immediately teaching myself how to play.
Okay.
Put a songbook in front, learn one chord, learn another chord, learn to switch between the two, then add a third chord. And it was less than 2 months later I started playing out.
Wow.
And I had a fistful of folk songs that I knew from growing up or from the accordion, and it's been a love affair ever since. And songwriting has still been the main focus of everything that I do.
Okay, curious. What was your first guitar?
A Degas.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was one of the popular guitars at that shop at the time. My brother knew about guitars. I wasn't even involved in the process. He went in, he knew about guitars. He bought, it was a 6-string acoustic, flat top, and that was I still have it, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, back in the 80s, somebody wanted to learn how to play, and I sold it and regretted it. I'm like, that's my first guitar. A year later, I ran into her. I said, "How's the guitar playing?" She said, "I never really stuck with it." So she sold it back to me.
Oh, that's nice. Unfortunately, I've never been good at holding on to things, but it must be wonderful to have that memory. And there's also the fact that it was a gift from your brother that makes it special. So how did you get started writing songs?
Well, as a kid, I loved poetry. Read everything I could get a hold of, and wrote poetry. And then after the accident, I kept writing, but now I had a guitar to play, and I started saying, well, if I could write poetry, I should be able to learn how to write songs. It's not all that different. Some people think they're one and the same, and they're not. So I started actually reading everything I could on how to write songs, and started writing songs, and from then on took all the classes I could get and weekend seminars all over the place, learning how to craft a well-written song.
Okay, so for you, songwriting is an art, a craft, and a passion, it sounds like.
Passion, absolutely. I would be lost without it. It is. It's like in everything I do, in every day, I'm always hearing a song in something, and I'm always jotting things down.
So where do ideas for songs come from?
Oh my goodness. It could be a conversation. It could be just a word I heard in passing. It could be a piece of a song that I heard on the radio, and in my brain twists it around into something else,
Okay.
Which especially works well for country music, if you can find a double entendre or something.
Oh, sure. And in country music, there's that long history of answer songs.
Yes.
Where somebody writes a song and then somebody else writes a song in answer to that.
Yes.
And
I did that, actually.
Okay.
As one of my it was a songwriting exercise to challenge myself. It was back in the Oh gosh, it had to be like the very early 80s when I was doing a lot of country music, and I had heard about that, and so I wrote a song called "Someone Who Could Melt My Cold, Cold Heart."
Ah.
So it takes that twist from Hank Williams. That song won me second place in the Massachusetts Country Music Awards Association.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it was really cool because John Lincoln Wright was the big top seller out in Boston as a country artist in Massachusetts. He won first place and third place, and here I am smack in the middle.
Oh, that's
so it's like,
wonderful. Yeah.
I'm in there with good company. You know?
There you go.
But yeah.
There you go. So, one of your songs, "One Last Kiss," got a Songwriters Award from the Indie Music International?
In Nashville, yes.
How did that come about? How did they get a hold of it?
That was really interesting. I was going to Nashville 2 to 3 times a year and pitching songs, and also attending any seminars I could on songwriting and publishing. And so I had built up a reputation and a rapport with a couple of small publishers there. And lo and behold, one of them calls me, and he says, "We've got 2 sisters, twin sisters, flaming red hair, big hair act," as they were known at that time, and they're putting out their first album. And I had been doing all my own demos with tight harmonies, usually at least 2 harmonies, maybe 3. So he remembered that that's what I did, and here he wants something for 2 women to sing. And I said, yeah, okay, I just got through writing one, can I send that? And he said, sure. I said, well, how many songs can I send? He said, send 2 or 3. So I sent 2, and one was "One Last Kiss," and I was absolutely amazed he picked that song up. And they changed one line. Of course, they have to ask your permission, but they did a rough demo of it, which was amazing. They used a lot of my production for it, which was even more amazing because usually they change all of that, and put a great guitar solo over it, and then sent me the demo and said, "Can we have your permission to do it this way, changing this one line?" And I thought, if that's what it takes to get the song, and it doesn't change it in my ears enough to take away from what the song says. So I said, sure, and they did that, and a year later I ended up with my first award.
That's wonderful.
Go down to Nashville and hobnob with people. And
okay, what's that experience like, going down to Nashville, where the business is really there?
Well, it's interesting because Nashville is huge. I mean, in terms of space, it's bigger than Worcester. So it's all spread out, and yet you've got the downtown Nashville here with Broadway and all the little shops and Hard Rock Cafe and stuff, and the touristy things. And the Music Hall of Fame is now located down there. They moved it. And then you've got the Music Row over here in the shadow of Belmont University, 14th through probably 18th, 19th Avenue, where it's just buildings for all the publishing companies and record labels. And then beyond that, you've got what would look like any other city in the Vanderbilt University area.
Okay.
And then, there are other major parts to it because it's so large. So when you get down there, it's not like it's in one location.
Okay.
So you have to know, if you're going down there for music, what is your intent? If it's to knock on publishing house doors, you need to know that that's the area over on, 16th Avenue area that you're going to go to, and where are they located. And some of them are small companies where they might be in a small building or a house or a duplex, and then you've got the major labels that are in, buildings and stuff like that, and a couple recording studios over there.
Yeah.
But if you want to play, that can be scattered all over, or you're going to want to play down on Broadway on the street so that the tourists hear you.
Okay. Yeah. So in the past, you've been in a number of bands as well.
Yeah.
It sounds like doing a lot of different types of music.
Yeah, and some of that was stretching out a little bit. I started as the folk singer, the Joan Baez thing. Got into country, did country. I've really been doing country forever since then. But when I came back from my last tour, where I had been touring continuously for a number of years, I was looking for a little bit of a change, and somebody offered me an opportunity to sing in a rock band. I tried it, and I was with the band for about a year, but it was too hard on my voice. Trying to really power and hit some of those higher notes and stuff like that. And I said, no, this isn't for me. But I enjoyed the process and the whole band concept. And then I switched and went between country rock, classic rock. And for a while, I sang with a lot of different bands in the area. I would fill in if somebody needed, because I knew all the tunes.
Right.
And that was fun. So and I got to try a little bit of blues. And a little bit of jazz.
Okay.
So, and I think all of that also helped form a different focus on the songwriting too. Adds a little different flavor to it, so that everything doesn't sound the same.
Right. And it never hurts to have a variety of influences.
Right.
Sometimes you can tell when somebody is too highly influenced by one particular artist.
Right.
And that can show. So,
right.
Now you have also been involved in starting a number of songwriting groups and organizations.
Yeah, in the 80s, I was a member of the Connecticut Songwriter Association, and learned a lot through that experience. And I had also joined Nashville Songwriters at that time, but they didn't have regional meetings, and even now the regional meeting for Massachusetts is out in Boston on a Monday night. It doesn't work if you have to do the day job routine. But with the CSA, I learned a lot about how to run a songwriting organization and what different elements you can put into it. And from there, I saw there was a need in Massachusetts. Nobody was doing anything, and they weren't really branching out of state, so it wasn't going to be the New England songwriters. Somebody tried that in Boston, and it didn't last long. But I got together with people in the Western Mass area and created the Massachusetts Songwriter Association. We held meetings on a monthly basis. We had speakers come in. We did projects. We did a big show that was, we were able to use Westfield State Auditorium.
Wow.
Did a big show there of all songwriters and stuff, and yeah, it was great. And while it lasted, and then the last year or two, we had meetings at Falsetti's in Springfield. They were really generous about that. But it became more the age of internet,
right?
And people were like, I don't want to go to a meeting, where I get the information on the internet now.
Right.
So it changed a lot of the dynamics of being a part of an organization. But then a year ago, Peter Newland contacted me, and Lisa Martin and Paul Sticka, and he approached us. Lisa had also been doing a project similar to that. And he approached us to see if we wanted to start the Western Mass Songwriters Collaborative. And we, met a couple times and worked out details and started the collaborative. And we weren't sure what kind of a response we would get, because there are so many opportunities out there now
Right.
for songwriters to congregate. And there's a ton of open mics, more so than there was 20 years ago.
Sure.
Like every night of the week you can find one, and you can find multiple on any night, And Nadim's in Springfield was generous, and we decided that would be our home base. And we have a little corner in the front of the restaurant. They serve fantastic food. So on the fourth Thursday of every month, we hold a songwriter showcase. It's 2 sets, 3 songwriters each, and it's all original music. So it's really bringing the spotlight back to Massachusetts, and specifically Western Mass, that kind of gets overshadowed by everything else.
I've been in Massachusetts for going on 13 years now, and just in the time I've been here, I can sort of see where Western Mass is starting to blossom.
Yeah.
But certainly, when I talk to people from back home in Maryland and mention Massachusetts, they think of Boston.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, everybody does.
And I have been lucky enough to perform at one of those one of those showcases, and they're really a lot of fun. Now that's sort of patterned after the, speaking of Nashville, after the Bluebird Cafe. Sort of songwriters in the round type of.
Yeah, the infamous Bluebird down on Broadway, which has been there for a very long time and still going strong. In order to get a spot there, you have to, they'll put out a call saying we are doing a lottery for this date, and you have to know that, you've only got a day or two notice to know if you're going to be there. So if you're not in that vicinity, you might not want to put your name in there.
Right.
But yeah, and it's really all about the song. And if you go anywhere in Nashville related to songwriter business, that's the slogan. It's all about the song. And we want to focus on the songwriting and bring that to the forefront and let people know that there's a lot of talent in this area. It's really diverse. We've run the gamut. We've had folk singers, we've had blues, jazz, country, rock. The only thing, I think at this point, the only thing we haven't really had is someone doing electronic music, because a lot of times they've got a lot of other gear or something.
Yeah, I did that for a little while, and all of the wires and everything else. Yeah. You have to have a good reason to carry all that stuff out and set it up.
And you have to have the space too.
Absolutely.
And with specifically in Nadim's, we're in the front corner of the restaurant, and there's barely enough space sometimes if it's really busy in there to have the 3 chairs and then still have the sound system to the side of us.
Right.
So we're kind of and that's the hard part too, is that we have to stick to focusing only on a solo artist.
Right.
Where a number of people have contacted us and said, I'd like my band to play, or I have a trio, or I have a duo. But we simply don't have the space in this place.
Sure.
But there are other venues that are doing songwriter spotlights now, maybe just a little differently, but they are doing it with bands.
Yeah.
And they have the space.
Why do you think suddenly there seems, I remember when, as a songwriter, it was hard to get into any place because everybody wanted covers.
Yeah.
Why do you think the songwriter is now so popular?
I think part of it has to do with the You Can Be the Star and America's Got Talent, those shows that give the impression that you can have overnight success. But it's, again, it goes back to technology has made it more available for kids to learn. There wasn't the internet when I was a kid to learn how to play guitar. Now you can learn guitar on YouTube or any other programs online. So you can take classes in just about anything. And then you can put it out there on social media and you can build an audience. So I think that the focus is on the talent in the area, because people are seeing, well, there's stars all around us.
Right.
And you don't have to be going to Hollywood to find somebody who sings fantastic.
Sure.
We've got somebody right here in the valley. Yeah. Certainly Bryn Cartelli just won on one of those shows. And she's got an opportunity now that wouldn't have existed before.
Right. Now, you've done some recording, and I see that you've brought one of your recordings with you.
Well, this is the beginning. This is my very first album.
Okay.
She's a Riser. That came out in 1987. And yeah, that was the very beginning of recording. I had played for years. In high school, I played in, certainly with the trombone, in the bands in high school, including the jazz band and stuff like that. But I played accordion. My very first band was a polka band. So I did a little trombone in that band, but my job in that band was to play the accordion. And so I went from that to doing the folk thing and never really thought about putting out records. It wasn't part of, how we did things back then. And I played for years, and people would say, do you have any recordings? I'm like, well, nothing that's out there. I have lots of recordings that I've done at home.
Right.
You know, I've had a home studio for a long time, and you know, at least 4-track. And done stuff, but never really had the urge to have to press it and sell it to people. I figured, you know, I'm out performing, that's fun, I enjoy that.
Right.
So it wasn't until I was doing fairs and festivals and everybody said, you know, you have to have product to sell. So then I put out an album because you have to have something to sell.
And as I recall, 1987 is just about the time vinyl disappeared from record stores.
It is. It is. Yeah, they said, are you going to go with CD or vinyl? I said, I don't even know what CD is. Put it on vinyl. You know, and yeah, and probably by the middle of the next year, everything was being transferred to CDs.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, now they're going back to vinyl. So if anybody's interested, we have vinyl available.
There you go. Now, in addition to writing songs, you are also a novelist.
Yep.
You've written a book called Moon's Embrace.
Yes.
What made you decide to write a book?
I'd always wanted to do that. Like I said, I'd been writing ever since I can remember. I was writing poetry, and words were always in my head, and different from hearing voices, mind you. And although some people would probably wonder, but when I was in high school, I started to write a book. And I had an English teacher who took me under her wing, and she would sit with me after school and go over what I'd written and give me tips and stuff. And I had probably written about a third of it before my head injury. And when I was going to have the surgery, it didn't sound promising, and I thought I was going to die. So I had destroyed everything I'd written to that point.
No.
And afterwards, you know, it was like, oh my God, this is a miracle, I'm alive. And you know, a brain tumor back in the 70s is much different than a brain tumor surgery now. Right. You know, now they don't always even have to operate. You know, they can shrink them. Yeah. It always bothered me that I had gotten rid of it. I remember, you know, the storyline of what I'd written and kept thinking I'd go back to it. And songwriting kept taking over, and I don't know, I went up into the Catskills in the mid 2008, I think it was, 2008, 2009, and I'd gone up there to the prison to a job interview. And I was just so amazed at the Catskills and the bungalow communities and the whole history of the big resorts up there, and seeing the ones that were left vacant and you know, and stuff like that. And I came back and I asked somebody about the information, and they said, oh, I don't know. So I went down to the Yiddish Book Center in Amherst, and the woman, the receptionist, was amazing, and she says, oh, sit down, I'll tell you everything you want to know. She talked to me for 2 hours. I said, do you mind if I take notes? And I did. And I'm like, oh my God. Just the whole story of how the Catskills were developed and prospered, and then all of a sudden just died down, you know. And that whole area. Next morning I got up and I just started writing. And I made myself write at least, you know, 4 pages every day. And at first it was very, very difficult, because it occurred to me, I'm used to writing a 3-minute story.
Right.
You know, now I've got to write 300 pages. That's a whole lot of words that I'm not used to using.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
So
the good thing is it didn't need to rhyme.
Exactly. But it did take work. It did take focusing on, this is something different. And now all the detail that you would put in this short piece right here, now you've got to really elaborate and tell all the detail here so that the person comes right into it.
And I've got to say that I read the book and I loved it.
Thank you.
One thing that really struck me, and I read about 3 to 5 books a week.
Awesome.
I'm definitely a reader.
You're a reader.
And the one thing that struck me was that the characters did not feel one-dimensional.
Great.
In reading, you introduced characters, you learned a bit about them, but you felt like there was so much more to them than just what was shown. And you almost didn't need to know all that backstory, but you just knew that they were sort of living, breathing people.
5.
Wow.
And I just, that, just blew my mind, and I found myself anxious to find out how the book ended, and dreading coming to the end of it because I was just enjoying the time with those characters.
Well,
do you have any
thank you.
plans for a follow-up?
Yeah, and actually I've gotten back to it. I was going to do a sequel. This is The Moon's Embrace. This picture is ironically almost exact to a picture I took of that area. So I was able to find something to match that. But I'm working on another. I was going to do a set of 3, and instead I've taken off in a different direction because, of course, there's talking dogs in this book. They have their own story that's interwoven, and all of it, still with the theme of diversity and inclusion. So I had gotten from book signings and everything, so many people telling me they loved the talking dogs.
I noticed in things that I read that a lot of people seem to focus on.
We all can, don't look at me with that tone, it's like they're communicating with us. So it made me switch to, now I'm writing a book that's in a similar setting, but it's 98% the dogs.
Okay.
All having their own little adventure and a little life lesson, and just very little bit of human dialogue in there.
And for all we know, the dogs can read the book.
They probably could. I give my girls the newspaper every day when I leave for work, and I tell them to, work on their spelling and their vocabulary. So hopefully they can read it.
Great. If people wanted to find out more information, how do they get in touch with you?
I do have a website on eWebsite. It would be eWebsite, SparkieAllison.com. I'm on Facebook, and people can message me through Facebook. And the 4th Thursday of every month, I am down at Nadim's, either hosting or participating in the Western Mass Songwriter Collaborative Showcase. And I'm always there to meet people and talk about songwriting.
Great, great. So is there a question that I did not ask that you wish I would have?
That's a good question. No, well, probably if I'm doing any recording right now or doing anything with the songwriting at this point. And my answer to that would be, I just had an amazing critique through of one of my songs, one of my lyrics, with the National Songwriter Association. They have, you can get critiques or song evaluations or coaching and so forth. And I've been submitting songs and getting feedback and polishing. But I've never gotten such a tremendous glowing evaluation of a song and a lyric until just this past week. And it's a new song called Like Water. And it was inspired by a meditation. And what would you say to your child? What kind of advice would you give your child if they were going to go off into the world?
Oh, wonderful.
And mine would be like water, be fluid, be strong, be radiant and stuff. And so I had written this song and wrote a melody with it because they won't accept it without a melody. But my strong point is really the lyrics. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, they said, well, it works, it's good, the melody's good, but it's country, but not today's country, because today's country has that pop, hip hop thing. Yeah. And then they get to the lyric. They said, I wouldn't change a thing. The lyric is fresh, it's exciting, and it's beautiful. And I'm like, wow, okay. So now I have spoken to somebody about being a collaborator with me to do a more current melody.
Okay.
We'll do a demo and I'll pitch it down in Nashville. So we'll see what happens to it.
Sparkie, it's such a pleasure to have you in and to get to talk to you.
Pleasure being here.
And we will see you all again on Creative Connection, and thank you for tuning in.